the 11th degree of Scorpio, tighten it up its aspect to be eclipsed. And this is a Venus day, Venus hour where I'm at, with Venus in 27 degrees of Gemini. So, um, this episode that I'm going to just begin is a special eclipse special episode of the Do It by Feet series where I share the journey of me and my feet. And let's just see what comes up. So, I'm going to talk about the holistic meaning of what people call bunions or hallux valgus or whatever you call it. And as a person who is healing from that and dealing with that, then I want to talk about, to use this as a concrete case to discuss the differences in medicines and how there are cases where both medicines, the holistic and the conventional, kind of have these loopholes where they don't address issues, and who is falling in between the cases is you, the patient, who needs to be very patient with people when you come to treat yourself because they don't know much, they only know a lot of theory, and they're trying their best in the best cases to apply to you, but only you can say what applies. And so I'm dealing with this situation where, like many of the people, I was wearing the shoes that were in the stores and they're pointed. The history of that dates back to, and I don't remember the person who did this YouTube video about shoes and the history of shoes. So if I'll find it, I'll link it in the description. And it was the upper class historically that wore these pointed shoes. And these pointed shoes um, were worn by the upper class because they didn't have to work hard. They didn't have to work on their teeth. And so the shoes we are mostly wearing today, even the most athletic, kind of New Balance, you name it, are still a bit pointed, and it was preserved. And unfortunately, that does not fit the natural structure of our feet and our toes that need to spread up and do their balancing act. Um, all the while, barefoot shoes, like barefoot style, uh, it does fit to soil that you can step on barefoot anyway, to be frank. But it does not fit for the asphalt where you have to retrain yourself to step on your heels and not to have too much pressure on your heels so that you don't get, you're literally near to learn how to walk again. And so, as I've been learning this, I've been correcting the structure of my own toes and trying to find the fitting shoes and learning how to step on my heels. And it's kind of challenging to be like a baby that learns how to walk again. And as I'm looking at the bunions, so there's something very interesting about the bunions because it's the entire society walking with these shoes, and because we're so unaware, then the medical solution is, well, you're not walking on heel shoes, you're not walking on dancer shoes, you're walking in New Balance, so just do a surgery. But the surgery will not work unless you also change something about your life. And so the correctos and the bunion correctors are not being sold as a part of your medical health insurance. You cannot call your insurance and say, well, I need this, I need that. And it's not subsidized, so it is private. So this is also a private medication. Even in countries like Israel, we can say a lot of things about Israel. When it comes to medicine, people come from all over the world to Israel. So, there are a lot of complaints, and yet this is probably the best place on earth to be medically treated. So this is the best that conventional medicine has to offer. And there are big problems with this too. so, so even when you have welfare system and you have medical care, and even if you get welfare, you pay medical insurance with your welfare. So and all those things, you don't get the solution. Your feet do not get solution. If you need something to help your feet, it does not get funded. You have to fund it privately. And so I found myself spending, if I take the money I had to invest in just trying all kinds of solutions for my feet, it could probably be about between 1 month to 2 months of rent, and I'm not even beginning to be done with that. Okay, and I didn't even do pedicure. Like I did my own pedicure, and so this is private, completely private, for a person who's not making the income to fund this currently. Hopefully that will change. So that's another thing. And then there is another thing. You go to see alternative solutions. So what your holistic reflexologist would say to you, and this is also how I understood how a colleague of mine who was also a reflexologist and saw my feet, how she was misinterpreting a situation where I was in risk of violence, and she was misinterpreting that because of the things she learned. She learned something about bunions and about my feet, and I want to share this with you. So you don't make the same mistake if you are a holistic health practitioner, and you don't suffer from this mistake if you are the patient. You're just going to be patient with these people and either ditch them or find another solution, or take the useful thing that they say, apply it, but discard the rest, which is anyway what most of them want you to do. And I got them sneezing out there. La briotte! So, what you learn, if you learn to be a holistic health practitioner, if you learn to be a reflexologist, or acupuncture, because you also treat bunions with acupuncture, if a person has a bunion, basically, what she did explain to me is like, oh, there is no protection over the heart. But I learned that the medicine was very expensive, and then I didn't have the money. When I had, I did it. Because and I'm going to show it to you. This is my big toe, big toe, big toe, big toe, big toe. Hello, say hello to my big toe. This is the big toe, and then you get the bunion situation. Here it is. So this toe needs to be corrected from here, and then the other one is even worse here. So this is the head. This is the head, and we have the pituitary gland that's here. This is the neck, and this is the heart, and we have the thyroid here. As well, when we align it all, it affects our neck, it affects our head. If we go a bit here, then these are the eyes that need to be corrected, and these are the ears. So what happens when you are a holistic health practitioner? They teach you about the bunion. What they say is that people who have bunions tend to be constantly anxious, which is true because we have CPTSD, and they tend to blame other people for their own situation. Okay, so when I said I'm escaped, I walked out of the violent situation, then my colleague said, "Oh, you need and she was talking in essential oils. You need to do measuram." Where previously, before she seen my feet, she said you need to do basil. And basil is the Scorpio oil, which gives you penetrative insight into a situation so that you can walk out. And measuram is about diminishing your boundaries. When you have excess, when you're being too stubborn, then measuram is about diminishing those boundaries. Okay, so you won't be as stubborn. And so before she saw my feet, she said, "You're gonna need to do basil." And I was still with my psychologist back then. She said, "You're gonna need to do basil," because she wanted me to walk out of him. Okay. After she saw my feet, she was taught that people with bunions tend to blame others for the situation. She said, so she literally said, "I don't think this person is being violent." And I'm like, "Darling, you don't know." And I didn't understand why it is. Of course, I had to teach her and I had to save my own life, right? Um, and protect myself energetically and so on and so forth. But the good thing that she said is that I need to fix this. Okay, because there's no protection over the heart, and it aligns the heart and mind, basically. Okay, she didn't say that, but later when I learned the parts about reflexology, then this to align your bunion is to align the heart and mind. And this is a global pandemic because most of us are working with these pointed shoes, so we're gonna have the toes Unless you're insistent to walk barefoot, you're gonna have this. Now, what's the misconception? And the misconception, even if you think physically, okay, I'm not going to say that the person who has bunyan necessarily had tremendous childhood trauma. No. What I am going to say is that even if you think physically, if your shoe, if your foot, okay, is in this pointed shoe, you are physically in a situation where the no that your body says to the restriction that it has that are inhumane does not matter. And so, whatever you try to do, there is something there that's constricting you from being able to defend your heart, for being able to see clearly, to hear clearly, and to have a straight mind. And this was worn by the upper class, okay? The upper class wore these shoes. So the people that were supposed to be class privileged actually are not so privileged with their thinking, their hearing, and so on and so forth. And now it's like the entire society because everybody wanted to have these shoes. So that's fascinating, economically, philosophically, strategically, whatnot. Um, and the thing is that what happens and what usually happens also on an emotional, psychological level is that these people have certain circumstances where their no, they either cannot say no or they don't feel it's like the elephant that was tied to a chain and now they broke the chain, but the elephant does not move because it doesn't know that it can. And as I'm aligning my toes, usually what happens is that I start to do things that I didn't do before. I start to see options I didn't see before. Um, I start to open myself, but I also purge those situations where I couldn't say no. So there's a lot of no. Like I talk about what happened with my psychologist. I talk about what happened. I was 9 years old. I talk about what happened in university. Like I talk about these things because those things are being purged. And those are very deeply emotional. Like aligning your toes. I'm 38 at this age, is a totally emotional situation. Um, and that is something that's important for people to know because what's happened is if you have these circumstances, you're going to go to conventional medicine, they say, well, do a surgery. I've only seen it working in one, there's only one case where I heard a person did the surgery and was satisfied, and that was the case I talked about it, about a dancer. And because what she was doing with her feet was doing her good to her life path, then she straightened up the feet, and if she will continue to do good to herself, that can work. But because most cases, either you're in the wrong job, you're in the wrong whatever Pisces in your chart, whatever Jupiter in your chart, so you can be in the wrong relationship, being with the wrong gurus, and thinking about your conceptual. Jupiter is also conception. It's the seed. So birth, childbirth, and I've been receiving a lot of stuff about birth. I was just sharing on Twitter, Catherine's or Catherine Urban's video about the birth of her child, which I suggest you all to listen to, whether you're an astrologer or not. Like, just listen to this story. It teaches you so much about so many things. I'm not gonna not gonna take her voice from her, but just listen to her story, and you're gonna get it yourself. So I'm just like things open up and things change, um, and then from that point of view where you are changing the physical circumstances in your life, like literally changing the structure of the toes. Saturn's structure in Pisces toes are like the Mercury part because they're like the fingers of the feet. Jupiter ruled by Pisces, which has happened to rule my ascendant, and that means that Placidus is also involved in my mental health. So, what the alternative healer is being taught is that if you come with the situation of Bunyan, then it's probably that you're the type of person who blames everybody else for what happened to them. Now, if you have had this situation being so stark that you felt it physically or that you've had trauma,
Mm-hmm.
um, like complex PTSD or stuff like the stuff I'm dealing with, then you were in situations in your life because I'm ruled by Jupiter, so of course it affected my life. And then I was more susceptible to be in situations where I was powerless, or that taking my power back was done like fiercely, like like U.S. after Pearl Harbor, and that is what do I have? Jupiter in Saturn sign. Okay, so it's considered fallen in Capricorn, the 11th house. So dreams and goals and all that much. And so what happens is that the people get to be victim blamed twice. They get to be victim blamed for the structure of their feet. Oh, exactly. So it's like not only when you deal with CPTSD, you're being victim blamed and people blame you for making the wrong choices, or people blame you because you can't communicate, or people blame you for putting yourself in these situations, or say you have the tendency to re-victimize yourself and so on and so forth. Like, but everybody walks with these shoes, but there's so many pedos out there, like so many, and there's so many offenders out, like so many, and so on and so forth. So when you get to this situation, it's kind of like when you're tackling the trauma, you're being victim blamed, and when you're tackling the feet structure, you're being victim blamed by a holistic health practitioner that tells you that that you're blaming other people for your life circumstances and so on and so forth, that you're not tackling the trauma. Well, in fact, you're having a physical, psychological situation where mind affects body and body affects mind, where it's by tending to the structure in the best way you can that you're going to tend to the things related to it in your life, and then options and structures are going to change and open up for you, and you're going to do these structure opening by speaking up, by whatever, and then you will have the leverage so that you don't supposedly blame other people in your life, because you have inner resilience and you can see the point of intervention that you do have in life where you couldn't possibly see that when you were traumatized as a child. It was not exposed to you, you didn't see that, and then people put you in shoes where you can't hear well, you can't see well, and your mind's not right, and your hormonal system is askew, and you're being blamed for it. So that's kind of the 22 catch that I want to burst here with this, Mars ruled eclipse. I want to burst and purge this loop where we can intervene. And this loop touches both conventional and holistic medicine. Okay? Because when I tell people I'm a holistic health practitioner, if they've had this experience where they've been blamed for their problems, um, well, the fact is they have a very good reason to feel the way they feel, and something needs to happen entirely, like in society or structurally or whatnot, so that that will change, so that they will have better choices available for them, and people listen to the world holistic health practitioner and they're like, oh, I don't want anybody blaming anybody for the ailments that they have. This is not something they did bad in the past. And it's like, it's true. And there is also the point of interference. Like, if I tend to my toes, then I purge something emotionally, and then I'm able to do things. I'm able to alter my path. If I'm being listened to and held, like something opens up in me and I'm able to speak. And I was in this situation where I was at the post office, and there was a woman that I knew that she was asking for money from people because she didn't have money. And she was sitting next to me. She basically wanted me to light the candle and pray for her. And in the beginning, I didn't understand anything that she said, but I just listened. And after a couple of, like, I don't know, 20 minutes or so, like, she began to speak clearly. And that was the power of somebody listening to her. And she suddenly began to speak clearly. And I was like, uh, you know, and I couldn't forget. And I lit the candle for her, of course, afterwards. Um, and what she was asking was for me to pray for her. So I did, and that shows you how certain certain points of intervention do alter the course of being, and that has to do with both the inner resilience of a person and what we do for ourselves and the structure around us and what is allowed or what is available in society. And sometimes like it's something inner that opens up the doors to more and more solutions, and sometimes like you get the solution or people try to tell you something and they tell it partially, and like something happens and until you get this answer correctly. Um, so, is it that people that went through trauma or that have bunions tend to blame the surroundings for what's happening in their life because they don't see the way or their point of view? Yeah, it can be seen from that point of view. Is this point of view helpful and constructive to healing the situation? Just like, what about providing toe correctors of some kind and informing the people that as they correct the structure of the toes, if there is an issue, let's say in a reflexologist, they're going to probably experience a lot of emotions involved with the reason or the structures that were not allowing for their toes to be aligned, and that is not a linear process. This is something that I would say, from knowledge from experience, um, that this is something that's going to happen. When you treat your body, you're going to have emotional purges. And when you treat your emotions, then of course it contributes to aligning your body. Okay, like that woman suddenly began to speak clearly, like, because I listened. Um, so in this case, the holistic view on bunions is also needing correction and needing attunement and adjustment. And this is a one study case that tells the difficulty of both conventional medicine to portray its value, because for conventional medicine, it can be inaccessible, it can be cold, it doesn't see the person holistically. So it's like, okay, we see we have this problem with the bone, then here's a surgery that we can do. And this will fix it. Like enough with these products that they sell you, we don't fund it because it doesn't help. Yes, because it's a whole process of doing that. And that problem will repeat itself if the person does not change how they behave with their feet, what shoes they wear, which is less easy than what it seems, but it's not impossible. Um, and on the other hand, the holistic people kind of give the patient the feeling that they are to blame for their disease. And again, I want to emphasize on that. Okay, I'm not going to tell cases, but it's something that I ran into in my personal life for the person that was mistreating women, and eventually he had erectile dysfunction. So, and again, it doesn't matter who it is. It does just so you know. And the person was taking blood tests, and the blood tests were absolutely okay. So, what happened is that probably they had a good reason to have a trauma that caused them to be disrespectful for women. And eventually, the mind, what happened is that they would need violence or they would need like stuff like that, and eventually, the penis was no longer, and it was not something that they ate, and it was not their age, it was not that. It was basically that their own disposition, the mental disposition towards women, was not supportive of having good sexual relations, which was decaying their penis. Does that mean that they are to blame for their disease? No, they probably had a serious trauma that affected the way that they see women. That being said, does that mean that there's no connection between they're being or acting out as a narcissist or cerebral narcissist or somatic narcissist, and the erectile dysfunction, yes, there is. Okay, of course. Is, or if I go back to Bunyan's, is my ability to is the way or the constant stress and hypervigilance that people who have CPTSD have my fault? No. Is there a connection between this situation and my not having the leeway or the breadth length to um, see opportunities in my life and take on opportunities, so that the proportion of the difficult stuff is so diminished that they do not even have a signification in my life? Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is where we need to be extra sensitive and extra cautious, because we want to tackle the holistic connection. Here we want to tackle the holistic connection. We want to intervene. We want to break the loop. Here we want to create leverage. We want to break the loop so that the person can heal. But we also don't want to shame the person. We don't want to put them down. And sometimes it's difficult. Okay, like what if they're the person that offended you? And now to protect yourself, you want to both create a solution, but you're also healing yourself, and you need to talk, but you also you don't want to block their health because you understand that we're connected. Okay, your like their health problems are probably seen in your chart. Okay, this person had Mars in Leo, and Leo is my sixth house. Okay, and I'm not gonna say who, I'm not gonna say what. It doesn't matter. But that was okay. Um, and my feet issues, Placidus, I have the ascendant ruled by Jupiter, that is feet, and I had the moon in Pisces. But the moon in Pisces was probably in the middle or first decan of Pisces. That would be Placidus, my 12th house. So it's the blind spot for me. And even when they try to come to me in my dream, and I had the dream that they are playing for the wrong team because they liked soccer and so. And they had like a dream that they shared with me, and there was like scissors cutting my the nail, like the where between my nail and in my big toes, because I have this ingrown toes, like the toes were beginning to be ingrown. So they seen it, and they were trying to tell me that, but like they were, they were my offender, and so we were seeing each other's health conditions. And not only that, because what happens when you're offender, then if I spoke up, then for his interest, supposedly, it was good so that I will be in hospital and be given beta blockers, like I'm imagining things. But beta blockers, the same pills that are given to people to silence people who speak about violence, basically, when you think about it, although the medical personnel, they were like, I have to try to help you, because if I say that you are crazy, then they don't sue you for speaking up. So they were trying to do the best thing for me. But they were also concerned for me, and they wanted to help me with anxiety and give me these beta blockers. And these beta blockers nearly killed me. But the thing is that that person was also a war veteran, like, many people. And they also had a surgery in the heart. And beta blockers are also given to people who have heart condition. They're also given to people who have cancer after, how do you say this? Kanot, sozusagen. The chemotherapy. Okay, so they have nausea, and for extreme nausea, they want to repress the contraction, okay, that causes the vomiting, because it endangers the life of the person. So they do this, they give this olanzapine, which is also a beta blocker. And so in this situation, that was like, supposedly in his interest was that people will think I'm crazy and I will be on pills. But those very pills that I ditched contain beta blockers that he is taking and he should not be taking. And this is life and death. And when you think about the penis issues, it's also about birth and fertility. And this in my sixth house, it was the time when I was bleeding like, And this time I asked for easy flow. I'm finishing my moon days, and I had relatively easy flow. Um, Even though COVID and even though the Pfizer injections did affect my hormonal system, and this is not to be gaslighted, there's no that's a no-no. And when I think about the conflicts that we had between us and ourselves and us and each other, they also had to do to medicine, because he had traumas also with religious people, with the family that were concerning the mother, and those that made him hate anybody who was religious, of any religious religion. And because religion stands on medicine and welfare, um, that's how you convince people, right? You give them something that works, and you say, "Oh, this God sent this," and so they begin to follow it. Um, and and so anything that comes that smells from religion, it could not be perceiving that this is healing for somebody, because religion blames people for their ailments. And there I was, kind of blaming him for his erectile dysfunction. It was like, you probably have a good reason to feel how you feel. And yes, the way that you see women does affect erectile dysfunction. You wouldn't want it, like, you wouldn't want your dick to be hard and standing where for violating the sexual boundaries of your mate. Like, you wouldn't want it to be hard instead. Like, we wish that all dicks started striking when somebody tries to rape somebody. We wish that happened all the time. So a lot of times for men, we have erectile dysfunction. This is not your dick dysfunctioning. It's actually your dick working. It's like your penis doing the right thing. It's like either you're not ready or the partner is not ready. If something needs to be purged, something needs to be tended to, and then but then a hard dick does not mean that everybody's ready, which is another important lesson. Um, Same for a saucy and juicy vagina. So yeah, and yes, people who deal with, let's say, yeast infections and so on and so forth, many cases it's that the way, either from self pleasure or not, we have sex is not aligned with what we need, and it can also be the relationship. Okay, because if you have like a fight with your partner and you're like, let's have a makeup sex, then your vagina says, no, deal with your issues outside of bed and then come to me. So that's also happening. Um, and so when we tend to it from a holistic worldview, which we should, we need to understand that both conventional medicine is also our aid. And please just listen to Catherine Urban and her story about the birth of her daughter Layla, and how this mixture of the holistic methods and the technology that exists in medicine helped to bring this beautiful baby to life. And yeah, it's good that we need the medicines to work together. In Israel, we have a doctor that helps women who choose a home birth to reach hospital and get medical care if something, becomes troubled. Because sometimes you have an emergency and you do need medical care. The fact that you chose to give birth, let's say at home or in a pool in a place, is not so stressed. Um, but he is now in jail for helping these women, because people don't want women to take any power on their own birth. And on the other hand, when we do take power on our own birth and our own medication, our own self, we also want there to be this network of support of where if something goes, weird, then we have the technology and we have the medical care and we have these people that can help us. We just want to blend in a way that is more natural, to blend technology and birth and technology and healthcare system in a way that's supportive. So no, like, if I go back to my feet story, yes, I do need to correct a correct toes, but I also need to be mindful of my own emotions and when it becomes overwhelming to correct my toes and to take a break. And I also need for that to be available for me and for the right shoes to be available for me. Now that I'm recorrecting or retending to a certain situation from a new point of view, where we are retrieving something that was lost, but we are also doing that with the assistance of technology that we invented. Okay, like the silicone toe spreaders. Um, And that all pertains to my thesis, because when we talk about being more experimental with our medicine, and when we talk about being more traditional, and that relates to not only conventional versus non-conventional medicine, is also traditional medicine versus the application of traditional medicine in our day-to-day world. Yes, we do need technology. How, when, how to interfere, this is a whole art. And yes, we also need to apply things to today. Is there no relation between our actions and thoughts and our medical situation? Probably there is. That being said, are we to blame for our ailments? No, no. And so there's this sensitivity that needs to be brought to the surface, that you like, even if you're thinking in a way that is contributing to your medical situation, you're probably doing that for a very good reason, and we probably need to find a way to interfere so you can break that loop, and so you can see the situation, the structure can change, and probably a lot of things in the world need to change, and probably we're going to have to invent a lot of new stuff, and so that you will have the leeway to think differently. And just tending to it can create this gap where something good can come in, and where slowly something of the, the terrible past can be released, because now you see that the circumstances has changed, and therefore now it is a new reality, because the structure is changing, and now this structure allows for a new reality to be in your life and to stay. So this is my Venus eclipse wisdom. It's not yet the eclipse, it's really pre-eclipse, and I'm going to post it right now. So there are probably going to be a couple of videos today, and I'm again with my parents, and I'm celebrating birthday tomorrow. So this eclipse affects my solar return. Um, and you think about the moments of death and the moments of birth, which are so related, and you think about this realistic appraisal and of how we integrate the old and the new, the building character to relaxing into and being easy with on ourselves, to finding a point of power and point of intervention, in a way that's respectful for ourselves and for the other people in our life, the understanding that we're all connected and we also need to have boundaries. So the other point that this eclipse touches, where the sun is in Taurus, and that's the second decan of Taurus, which I'm thankful to. I think it is Kelly, who has makes this art for the deacons, and she quoted. Oh, but this time it was not Kelly; it was another woman. She quoted Austin Coppock, and then she took this was how Austin Coppock became a Mercury retrograde. Actually, I should tell the story. The funny thing is that they quoted, where Austin was saying about the second decan of Taurus and having the sun there, that this is the dance between uncontrollable desire and consent. Now, I didn't know it was Austin. I didn't know anything and didn't have context. And immediately, Mercury retrograde, I was shit fuck angry. And I was like, no, this is justifying sexual offenses. Like, it's not a dance between uncontrollable. There's no dance there. And of course, I have the sun in 15 degrees Taurus in this decan. Okay, it's called what he called the Lingam Yoni decan, which I found very beautiful. And then I looked into the article deeper, and I was like, okay, maybe I didn't get something, and I saw it was quoted in Austin Coppock, and they talked about like not every vagina wants to be filled with a particular phallus at a particular time, that the phallus is, wanting that. And I was like, oh, like he was just being like, yes, this is very traditional view of sexual boundary violation, that is between desire and so. But in essence, it's not necessarily untrue, because there is this point of rejection and the fear of rejection that one the person wants to take the power over the fear of rejection and then violate the boundaries of the other person, and so it is violence instead of passion, and therefore the feminists are absolutely right when they say sexual offense is about violence, it's not about sex. Um, but the understanding that underneath there is a certain desire and the fear of rejection, and then when that rejection comes, then there's this uncontrollable anger. I mean, even if I go to the case with my psychologist, we were having astral sex, volition, like consensually, whatnot. Like, this is not my complaint. And then I was thinking about my own non-sexual self, and I was like, okay, I was so concerned with finding a sexual circumstances where I feel good before, during, and after. Now I want to see how do I feel also outside of sexuality. And I was not, and that probably steered the rejection trigger, and then he became violent. And I was like, you know, and it was not that I was even rejecting, it was that I just wanted to take time to explore me outside of bed. So that is how the desire rejection can play out in this decan, where consent is so important, willing consent is so important, and willing consent, it kind of takes a certain separation, because but then we are both separated and connected. And this is how sometimes men get what they think is erectile dysfunction. It's not. Your dick is not hard because either you or your partner are not ready, and our body is just smart, so it's just not doing it, not ready yet. Okay, that being said, it doesn't mean that when it's hard, then. So this dance of being separated and being connected is true. And and when we heal from these situations, um, we are healing in context, and the situations are in context as well. And so, um, look, like, imagine the fact that if you're, let's say, where Me Too case, okay, and you um, had to go to hospital so that they will say you're crazy, so that you won't get sued for speaking up, and they would give you beta blockers because they were trying to calm your anxiety. And they have to say, well, this person has diagnosis, so you, like, leave her alone. Okay, and this is where not the psychiatrists are not to blame. It's not, there are horrible people out there, but sometimes even with the best of people, you have these crazy circumstances. And then the person that you were hurt by, they had a heart issue, and they are taking probably beta blockers to maintain their heart condition. And so the same pills that you are given so that you will not speak up about what they did, they are taking these pills. And so when you ditch that and heal yourself, which is why I said the best thing a person can do for themselves is to heal themselves, you expose this thing about beta blockers, now they can know that this thing can kill them anytime. And they can heal. Like, that they have a chance to heal. So when you're speaking up, you're healing you. You're basically giving life also to the people who are threatening to take your life. Basically. Because they're taking these pills too. They are in risk where if you've had a heart attack or heart surgery, then there is fear that your heart will have, what is a heart attack? Your heart contracts, and then boom. Um, and there are many cases, but heart failure, it's like you feel this contraction, and then boom. And this contraction is basically what the beta blocker does, is so that you will not contract. This is so how you don't vomit and how you don't get heart attack, and they want so that you don't have anxiety, so you don't have non-dual experience, what they call psychosis. Okay, so psychosis is when you are exposed to certain experiences that are not like just physical, there's physical and spiritual, like clairaudience, clairvoyance, and so on and so forth. But the thing is that if you have a trauma inside you, then what you're being exposed to, your non-dual experiences, is kind of like trying to dictate you to change your life so that you will not run into certain consequences. Okay? So it's kind of like you're connecting with something. It's just that you need to fix that connection. Usually, you come to these non-dual experiences while already having traumas with people or with relation connections, communication in general. And so it comes to a situation where if you can't talk about what this person did because you might die, then you can talk about, I don't know, seeing this or seeing that, and then while you're exposed to non-dual experiences, you're also exposed to dimensions that are not clear to people. So you're sensitive to frequency, and you would see it as a vision or you would hear it as a voice. And then we get to neurology. Okay, I know a person close to my life that has had began to hear the ocean, and they really like the ocean. So like you really need to be more in the ocean. Okay, and sometimes it's as simple as that. You're not next to the ocean. You really like to travel to the ocean, and so you begin to hear it in one of your ears, just like Oliver Sacks' books. C'est tout. Um, and funnily enough, they have Mercury ruling the sixth house of health in a water sign in Scorpio, which is now being eclipsed. So, like, move next to the oceans. You will start to hear the ocean like this, and you won't have to hear it like this. It's that simple. Um, and so, this is how we get to the notion that we need to understand how we are connected so that when we are enemies, so to speak, we understand that we are also connected. Okay, it was my Gegenüber, okay, the open enemy, that was coming in my dreams to show me things about my feet. And why was he so interested in that? Because I affect his health as well. And it was like a compulsion for me to speak up about the connection between cerebral narcissism and erectile dysfunction. Because he brought his Mars to my freaking sixth house. This is the house of birth, giving birth. Okay, so that is, and the life circumstances were so that the boundaries were violated. Okay, then it's like, okay, how do I speak up in a way that I don't create more troubles, but I also need to speak up? And how do they tend to themselves or to the point of view about women in a way that, that they're actually treating the problem that caused this thing in here and in here, okay, the above and the below, without blaming themselves? Because when I say it, then of course they will feel like I'm blaming them for their for the disease, and it's like, you know, it's very difficult not to do that when you are the person who just had to protect their own boundaries from that person. So that those kinds of circumstances are the reason you would hear people going to conventional medicine, not getting help, going to holistic health practitioners, feeling like, oh, we've been victim blamed twice. And hopefully, this special episode kind of points at where you can interfere, where you can break this 22 loop, and where you can hold this dissonance that we are both one and separated. And we need consent. That in order to say yes to you, I need to be able to say no to you, and vice versa, which is triggering all of our rejection triggers. Okay, if I go back to the case with my psychologist, yeah, I was absolutely not supposed to sleep with my psychologist, astrally or not. No, that was absolutely not my problem. And even in this situation where I was thinking to explore also my non sexual side, he bought me my stuffy panda and I hugged her. And the first time in my life, I felt that I'm not merging emotionally with her. So I have this ability to feel me and to be able to hug. And that was very important to me. But I didn't know how to voice it, and I wanted to concentrate on this non sexual experience of, you know, holding my stuffy. And then, you know, it's like the person, yes, my psychologist, but back then he was the person I was sleeping with, went balloonies, where I wasn't even rejecting him. It was not even that I'm not attracted or that I'm not, you know, that I don't want to. It's like, it is so much so that even in the most intimate relations where there's volitional sex, where there is consensual in the crazy world's most crazy circumstance. Kind of like this. That was a way weird way of life. But I understand what brought to these circumstances too, and it's kind of like even with the person that you are both attracted to and both had sort of kind of a willing consensual. It's very difficult to say that when it's astral, sexual experience. Then even in those situations, it's enough that one person wants to explore the non-sexual part, and it already triggers the rejection that kind of triggers these bursts of violence that are like uncontrollable, and that's very scary. And it's also something that needs to be tended to, so that people can heal. Because if I'm not healthy, one of the things that I remember, because I tried to use psychic attacks and have it in a situation where I would be given pills that probably will kill me or something like that, and I was like, it's kind of like telepathically. My mind say, I do not agree to make you a murderer. I do not agree to make you a murderer. It's like if I die, you will lose so much. Like just because you care so much to do this harm to me, so you will lose so much that if I die, this is not like yes, this rage and things that are driving you crazy. But if I die, it's not a solution for you. If something bad happens to me, it's not a solution for you because you will feel the loss like it is your body. Because that's how we were, we're in each other's dreams, in each other's energy, each other's this, each other that. It's like this is no good. Okay, so this is where this we understand that we are separated, and this causes a lot of pain, but also a lot of joy and desire. And we understand also that we are not that divided. Okay, we are not that divided. Um, and so it's important that we create the structures that allow for us to have um, good relations with ourselves and to be able to be both separate and connected with ease, um, and understand this separation and connection and solve problems in a way that is beneficial for all sides. It's not marginalizing people, um, and that's yeah challenging itself. That's what we're facing basically. Also, society when you think about power to the people, power to the structure, power to this, power to that. Yeah, we do need to be inclusive when we say we the people. So, and not to the point where the victim of the violence is being pushed away, but also not to the point where we alienate, the other side so much because they were a victim too once, and yes, we need to defend ourselves, but also we want to remember that they are also a functioning member of society, um, without that to be in a situation where children are afraid to go in the street or women are afraid to go in the street and so on and so forth, or men afraid to be alive, basically. So, yeah, I hope this was helpful. So this touched a lot of things, and this is the end of the episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.